This is episode number 2 of the Nourish Life show. Now, there's an amazing quote which is, you are always one decision away from a completely different life. And for the majority of us, we usually know what that is. It's just sometimes it means taking a leap, which is a perfect segue into today's episode with none other than Yvonne Radley. And today we're going to be talking about all things building a brand, impacting the world, and living your dream life.
This is the Nourish Life Show. Break the mold and live a nourished life with Simon Hall.
So here we are. We have got Yvonne Radley from Big Me Up Media on the show. Yvonne, how are you today?
Hey, hi Simon. I'm really good. Thanks for having me on.
And talk to me, how are things going in the world of the Dream Life and the Big Me Up Media world?
Yeah, my little Dream Life Academy. Actually, we're just coming to the end of our first module, which is all about business. So they're a bit knackered, if I'm honest, because I worked them hard in that 12 weeks. And then we're going to have a little breather. And then we start our media module ready for January, because the press go mad for a fitness and health and wellness story in January. So we're just working on hoping that a lot of them get in the press in January. So just coming to the end of the year and planning for next year.
And that perfectly ties in with where I want to go with this podcast, because a big thing for us is we get a lot of people coming to us who really want to create their own brands, create a brand, or people who are just stuck and don't really know which way to turn or which way to walk in order to create their own thing. So a big thing from today, and obviously with the topic of this being build a brand, impact the world, and live your dream life.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be an amazing thing for us to share and move forwards with and from. Now, moving into you first, who is Yvonne Radley?
Who am I?
Who is Yvonne Radley?
I started out, actually, even before I was a journalist, I was a mum of 2 boys, a teenage mum, because I'm quite old. And back in those days, we all got married a lot younger. So I got married at, what would I have been, 18, I think. Had 2 boys. When they both turned 5, I was like, yeah, this home life isn't really for me. I'm going to go out there. And I always wanted to be a journalist. So while they were little, I did extra college stuff to get the qualifications. And then as soon as they went off to school, I went and trained at my local paper, the Loughborough Echo. And then for the past 30 years, I've been a journalist and a blogger.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So what was the penny drop moment for you where you decided that that was the thing that you wanted to do?
Do you know, I think I've always had it. I always loved writing, reading. We used to have a library van that came to our village, and I would go in every week and get 4 new books, and I would read all the books at school. So I've always been a constant reader. I think living in a small village in Leicestershire, there wasn't a lot to do. And so reading kind of gave you that sense of adventure, took you to a whole other world. And I just loved escaping. And so I've always had quite a vivid imagination. And I think that's really helped me in life, and obviously gave me that interest, so that when I decided to, pick a career, that came very naturally. It was like a burning desire.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. So one of the biggest things that I've seen from you is, obviously, I've spent a lot of time with you abroad, in the country. And also, I've had the pleasure of seeing you speak. Now, there was a powerful message where you dropped it. And I can remember turning to face Ashley, one of our coaches at the time. And it was such a powerful message from a childhood where a moment happened and it led you then to kind of review and change the way you thought about things.
Yeah.
What was that?
Oh, do you know what? That was the first time I'd ever told that story. And I didn't know whether to do it or not, because I'm not a fan of sharing really deep stuff. However, the whole room, I think that story did have an effect on. And I think we've all got those stories to a certain extent. And it was when I was 9 years old and the family had gone on holiday. And this was back in the 70s. So health and safety wasn't massive. And we were down on the beach and there'd been loads of diggers. I don't know whether they were building a new pier or something, but they were digging holes in the sea, well, on the beach, ready for, I would imagine, I don't know, some kind of pylon or whatever to go in to do this work. And they'd been kind of at the side, and, as a child, you don't really notice them. You're just building your sandcastles, running in and out for your water and everything. But at the end of the day, the tide had come in. And And my dad was out standing in the sea cooling down. It was a really hot day. And I thought, oh, there's Daddy. I'll run out to him. And I ran out to him and fell into this hole, which had now been covered by the sea. I literally hadn't paid that much attention and obviously didn't realize that the hole was there. And so I would have been, I don't know, about 3 foot tall, I would think. And the hole was probably 6, 7 foot. So when I fell in, I couldn't get out. And I sank to the bottom and then came back up. And then I'm trying to claw my way. But of course, because the hole is made of sand, this was like one of the scariest moments of my life. As I reached for the side to try and get a grip and climb out, the sand just crumbled away and I went down again. And the hole is like completely covered with the sea. I couldn't swim, but even if I could swim, it would make no difference. I was literally stuck inside this sand hole. And I went down about, I think it was about 5 times. And on the 5th time, it was really funny. I just everything went in, they say, don't they, when you're in an accident, it goes in slow-mo. And I just remember this sense of peace. I was totally at peace. And I just put my arms down by the side and let myself glide to the bottom. But at that time, suddenly I was thrust back into daylight and my mum had come across. She can't swim either. And she jumped into the hole and pulled me out. And then she managed to get her knee on the edge. And then she ran up the beach screaming, help me, help me. And nobody paid any attention. But obviously I lived to tell the tale. I was fine. It was such a terrifying, life-defining moment in a sense.
It's incredible. So the message that you gave away from that really, really, really resonated, because every time now that you were in a fearful situation, you always look back on that one moment. And what was the thing that you took away from it?
I naturally do this thing since that happened, is that whenever I walk into a room, whenever I'm doing anything, I do a risk assessment in my head. I look for exits. I'm really OCD about it. So if I'm in a hotel, I will check the fire escape. If I'm in a room, I'll check, I always look for danger and have a plan B. And it served me very well in life. And so whatever I'm doing, whether I'm traveling, launching a new product, working with clients, there's always a plan B ready. And so that when things go wrong, which inevitably they will do, I always have my plan B. So I always stay safe now. And it has served me really well. And when it comes to fear, I mean, you can't get much worse than being stuck in a hole that you can't get out of, literally made of sand. So, what is the worst that could happen? It does help me to take some leaps that probably I wouldn't have done normally.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And obviously living to change the world for another day, which is 10 times more important. Now, what I love about that message is it provides a perfect segue to go into the real heart of what I want to talk about here, which is actually taking that leap yourself. Because there's so many people who we come into contact with on a day-to-day who just aren't in a position where they're happy, or they're just kind of like letting life happen to them. And it's usually is that fear, isn't it, which is stopping people from moving forward and going towards what they actually want to do.
Yeah.
And what I love about what you do and what you're giving out to the world is that you've created a community where people have taken that leap. People are going out there and finding that voice and finding that message within themselves. And from standing on the outside looking in and also being within that, it's been an incredible thing to see. So, I want to acknowledge you for that, because that's an incredible thing to be doing. But being more to the point, I want to talk about what would be your initial first tips for someone who does feel kind of stuck or feels a little bit lost or hasn't really taken the reins. And what would you really say to someone who kind of wants to take that leap but doesn't really know where to start?
My big thing is to keep things simple. And to take baby steps, because if you try and run a marathon from the get-go, you ain't going to get very far. So you need to do some training beforehand, and you need to plan your route. But I think people go OTT when they are trying to plan, and in business particularly, they'll try and do too much, which means they get overwhelmed and can't do anything. So in the Dream Life Academy, what I get my guys to do is we all have just one goal for the year, and we reverse engineer that. So you're only allowed one goal. Every week we only work on 3 things a week, like a lot of gurus teach, don't they? Oh, do 3 things a day. We haven't got time to do 3 things a day because you've got your normal job as well. Like I serve the health, fitness and wellness community. They haven't got time to do, a long list of jobs. They're doing their real job and then they're marketing on top of that on the side. So yeah, we just do 3 things a week. Now, if you can do those 3 things every week, by the end of the year, and those 3 things have to tie in with your goal. So every 90 days we stop and check that we're still on track and we haven't gone off. But by the end of the year, it means you've done 156 things to get you closer to your goal, which makes a massive difference. It's the difference between having a good company and a great company.
That's amazing. I've never actually thought of it that way.
Yeah.
From that then, well, what would be the next step from that? So obviously people have got it. People kind of know the things in what they need to do. What would you say the next thing is for someone who's looking maybe to build a personal brand or create an actual brand in itself?
There's one crucial step that virtually everybody misses out. And I am always hammering on about it inside the Dream Life Academy. And that is that whatever you want to do, you have to have an audience first. So you do have to put in the groundwork. And it's just like exercise, you can't go in and lift 1,000 kilos. I don't even know if you can lift 1,000 kilos. I'm not very good with weights. But you know what I mean? You're not going to bench press an absolute ton. You've got to build up gradually. And it's the same with marketing, whether that's building an audience on Instagram or email. I mean, God, I'm such a massive advocate for email marketing. So if you want to, create a member site, and you want 100 people in it, then really you need a list of about 10,000 to get those 100. So you have to do a lot of groundwork initially before you can open the doors and say, hey, come and join my program. So you need an audience before you do anything. That's one of the key steps that most people, they just don't want to do that work. It is hard work to build an audience to then be able to sell to them.
I think that's half of the issue with social media as well, isn't it? Because a lot of people see what you've currently got and they don't see the work that's gone into the back end.
Yeah,
I know
we spend about 3 hours a day on Instagram.
It's amazing, isn't it? Absolutely amazing. But I know from my own experiences within that, a lot of people are like, oh, how are you in this position where you are? I'm like, yeah, but there's 10 years of hard work, graft, blood, sweat, tears, breakdowns this way that are here that have got us today. Obviously now with marketing and getting in front of people with personal brand and branding in general, it's becoming a fight for attention. And what I love about you is your approach on how to get into different media forms and obviously how to kind of get yourself noticed, so to speak. Now, what would be your biggest tips for someone who's looking to actually do that?
My biggest tip would be get yourself on Instagram, and particularly Instagram stories, because for small brands particularly, which is what a lot of us are in the health, fitness and wellness niche, it's all about connecting with your audience. And a lot of people, like I say, already have a day job, fitness. And so the marketing aspect is like a side hustle, a secondary thing that you have to do. And you do have to do it nowadays. So make it easy on yourself. Again, keep it simple. Nowadays, we all have these. And you don't need a film crew to follow you around. You just need to pull out your phone and document your day. Gary Vee talks about this. Don't create content, document what's already going on, because people love to see behind the scenes. My Instagram stories is so powerful. Last year we sold £22,500 worth of Dream Life Academy on Instagram stories alone.
That's incredible.
We were putting 3 hours a day in, like I say, and on a daily basis I'm on there showing people behind the scenes, giving them tips, sharing knowledge. And so this phone has just made it so easy for us. If you tried to do this back when I started in journalism, you'd have to have like a full TV crew with you, which you could never afford. It would cost you thousands a day. But technology has led us to this place, so why not use it?
That's amazing. And looking into the platforms, obviously, that we can now encapsulate, because there's hundreds now, isn't there, of social media platforms and attention driving platforms. Which would be the main ones that you'd focus on or maybe put your energy in? Or does that kind of depend on the person and what it is that they're trying to do?
It depends on the person. It depends on your product and your audience. So I always say to people, you really want to have a presence on the big 5, but you want to choose 2 to concentrate on. One should definitely be Instagram, I say nowadays. And the other one should be either something that showcases your product or where your audience hangs out. for example, if you deal with corporates, then on social, it's obvious that you want to be hanging out really on LinkedIn because that's where the corporate client is. If you want to be connecting with journalists, then you want to be all over Twitter. So different platforms have different audiences. And if you need to tap into a certain audience, you want to concentrate on that. The other angle to come at it from is what you're showcasing. So if you're into nutrition like Ashley is, you need a visual platform. So that's Pinterest or Instagram.
And clearly from this little point now, what I want to do is kind of shift that a little bit, because you mentioned something before which is a massive value of mine, which is connection and obviously connecting with the user and then impacting them. So from that, how would you then say that the best method is to go around like connecting with the users or connecting with the audience better? Is there a method? Is there a strategy? What you
Again, there's one thing that people do, and I don't know what it is about people being online. They seem to think it's different to being offline, and it's not. It's exactly the same. It's just like a parallel world. And so what most people do is they post and go. And so let's say they put a post out on Instagram in the morning, then they might go off and teach a class, meet a friend for lunch, pick the kids up from school, come home, and then they'll look and see if anybody's responded. And they're like, oh my God, nobody ever responds to me. And that's just like walking in a room and going, hi, everybody, are you having a nice day? And then legging it. So what you've got to do is when you post, literally stay on for 10, 15 minutes and talk to the people that are there. So people will, if somebody does respond, they're more likely to respond back, and you can have a little bit of a conversation and get a thread going, and then they'll get used to you doing that, and then they'll always kind of come in and have a little chat with you. So it's like that tribe building. You will build a tribe. When you're there, go through the feed and hit like and do some comments yourself. When was the last time you commented? You've got to communicate and connect. It's not all take.
No, I get that. I presume it's like just walking into a room trying to someone throwing you a high five and you're just completely ignoring it, isn't it, when you think about it from that way? Comes across a bit odd. Oh, now what I want to do here is just kind of talk more about you. So obviously I see what you're doing, and I think there needs to be more of that, because you really are bringing out the creativity in people and getting them to follow their passions and go and follow their dreams. And I think the world does need more creativity. Second off, what I want to do here is just talk again. I want to have a little bit of a look more into you individually. Now, what are the habits that you do? Have you got any non-negotiables or things that you implement each day which mean you're moving forwards, which means your business is moving forward, your health? What are the key things that keep you moving forwards?
I do have quite a few. On a Sunday, I always have an accountability meeting with myself. It's at 5 p.m. It's in my diary, and that's when I set my 3 tasks for the week. So I'm always on track. I always know, like this week, I know that as we're recording, it's Black Friday on Friday. So one of my main tasks, number 1 task, is to get my Black Friday deal ready. So all the graphics done for it and everything. And I need to write some sales copy as well, and obviously promote it on social. And I always choose like 3 things that I'm going to focus on for that week. So I always do that. I do like to journal. I do like to meditate. I'm not strict about it. Like some people have a complete morning routine. Mine kind of fits in with what I'm doing. I do like to work out in the morning. I don't wake up to an alarm. I like to wake up naturally. And I like it very quiet. I don't listen to the news, which is probably interesting for saying that I was a journalist for so many years. But I think it's because I had the news fed to me 24/7 and I was delivering the news 24/7 that nowadays I just don't want to know what's happening in the world. So I do live in a bubble, and I kind of like that as well, because it means that I have a different take on the world, a different perspective. When everybody's getting het up about something, it has no effect on me whatsoever, and I can stay focused on what I'm doing. I mean, obviously things, if it's really big news, it'll appear on social anyway and I'll get to hear about it. But I tend not to seek out the news. I don't want anything interfering with what I'm doing. I do the tracking, like I said. I'm a stickler for deadlines, being a journalist. So I am woo-woo, and we have our mood boards and we set our one goal and what our ordinary dream life looks like. So it's not about having one long holiday. It's about who we're spending time with, the little things that make up a dream life. And And we do a lot of tracking, like I was saying, the weekly, we do monthly tracking, and we do that quarterly tracking, and we have the one goal. So there's lots of accountability, lots of tracking that goes on in my world, as well as a few mood boards and meditation.
I think it's good. I think especially when you're connecting with other people, the person that we misconnect with tends to be ourselves, doesn't it? When we get caught up in the hustle and bustle of things.
Yeah.
So it's always good to take stock on things. Now, I just love the fact that you pointed up on the news and the media on that, because a big thing I've noticed now is people aren't willing to be fed the news anymore. They're actually going out there in search and looking. How are you starting to see that shift in like your world, and obviously with your past? Do you feel that there will be a shift in the media and with the news in the way that it starts going, or anything like that?
I mean, obviously newspapers and magazines have had to change the way that they work, and have much more of an online life nowadays. But it's natural evolution. When I was working as a journalist back in the 70s and 80s, there was a lot of investigative reporters. The newspapers, I worked for a lot of the nationals, News of the World being one of them, and absolutely loved working for the News of the World. 70% of their paper was all about news, and I saw that shift, and the journalists losing their jobs, which is why I eventually came out of it myself, because celebrities started to come through, brands started coming through, the world was changing, and the newspapers changed with it. And the features desk, which we used to take the mickey out of, like, oh, you're not a real journalist, we're the hard-nosed hacks. But the features desks took over, and the papers ended up being 70% about features, and the celebrity news. And I mean, I don't know any investigative journalists anymore. They're very few and far between. And nowadays you have like the people's journalists. So anybody can be a journalist in a sense, because if you've got one of these and you're at the scene of something, you suddenly become the person that everybody wants to talk to, and you are the one delivering the news. So I think it's constantly changing, and we all change with it.
Yeah.
Or die. If you don't keep up, we've seen that with retail. If you don't keep up with the times, then you are going to go.
You are starting to see that a lot more as well, aren't you? And that's what I kind of love it. I don't really watch the news or anything like that by myself, but what does crop up, or what tends to go viral online, is they're actually starting to share more like positive stories. You're not just starting to see all the bad that's in the world. You're actually starting to see a lot more of the good coming through, which I think is huge.
And there are some bloggers that have, I'm just trying to think, there's one guy's name, I think it's called The Good Newspaper, Brandon Harvey. And he literally...
The guy's incredible.
It is amazing, yeah. And he's got The Good Newspaper, and he delivers good news. I mean, we all want a bit of that every day. No,
totally. So on that note then, obviously if the people are becoming the bloggers, or the people are becoming the news, so to speak, is this why having a personal brand is becoming more and more important?
Why is it? It's not necessarily affected by the media as such, although I think maybe the celebrity of the world has changed it more so, in that everybody can be a mini celebrity now. Like, you can be Insta famous. And if you have a following, it's all about creating movements, isn't it? Whether it's, your gym down the road and everybody in your town loves you and loves what you do, you are the leader of that movement. Or whether it's on a global scale, it's all about leaders. And it's the people that can become leaders and can create movements and a new way of thinking and a new way of doing things. They're the ones that are going to be seen, because the world has opened up now with the internet and with social media, so that you can have a platform, you can write your own book, you can have your own TV show. The middleman has gone. And even if you want access to the celebrities, you can just DM them on Instagram. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, that's the thing that I love about this podcast. I didn't realize how I always thought like, who am I to be messaging this person? And then when I look at the list of people who have agreed to come on, I'm like, oh, it's actually, you literally are one connection away from someone who can open a door, literally change your world.
Yeah, we do. They did it in the Dreamies, in the Dream Life Academy about a month ago. I do an exercise with them where they have to pick 10 influencers. And if you're at a level 5, you're only allowed to contact people who are a 9 or a 10. And you message them and ask them to do something with you. You might want to blog for them, or you might want them on your podcast, or whatever it is that you want to do. And people always have fear about that exercise. Some still haven't done it. And I really have to keep pushing them to do it. But you know what? 9 out of 10 times people will say yes. And so it's worth giving it a shot. I mean, a lot of the guys that work with me in year one, they're no longer with me because they're literally out there living their dream lives, working with the influencers that they approached in the first place. And I love that.
That's absolutely incredible. That's absolutely incredible. What would you say the biggest fear is for a lot of people actually doing that? I know from my own experiences, it's always been, I've always really suffered with imposter syndrome, which I was trying to say before. It's like, who am I to speak to this person? And then when you actually flip it, it's a complete different game changer, isn't it? What would you say the biggest fear that you see in people actually doing that one thing that can move them forwards is?
It is imposter. It's fear of being rejected. None of us like to be rejected. It's fear of looking stupid. Because if they say no and then ridicule you somehow, it's fear, basically. What was I going to say then? I did think of something about imposter syndrome. Oh, yeah. I get my guys to flip it in this way. And it's like if you're about to go on stage. So say you accept a speaking gig and you want to go and speak, suddenly you get that stage fright as well. So it's the same kind of scenario.
I still get that.
But I always say again.
I still get that.
Do you? I love getting on stage. But it's the way I do it is I flip it in my head and I think of the people in the audience. So I don't think about what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. I think, how can Sandra in the audience benefit from what's in my head? If I can share what's in my head, am I going to help at least one person? And the answer is always yes. And so if the answer is always yes, it's your duty to do what you can and share your knowledge, whether that's on a podcast, in a blog, on stage, standing up in front of your class. And when you put the onus on them rather than on yourself, it's ego, isn't it?
Totally.
Take your ego out of the equation and just serve. And that, I always say, when you give, it comes back 100-fold.
I absolutely love that way of summing that up. Like, don't be selfish with your own message, because it can genuinely change someone's life. Get out your own way.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's incredible. So what is your number one success story then with the people who you work with? What's the biggest thing, or the biggest thing that you love seeing in people change? What's that big success?
Do you know what? With mine, even though it's called the Dream Life Academy, I mean, a lot of people, I think, initially probably think that we're out to create the 7 and 8 figure income, because I do media and business, and there's a lot of that on the internet. But we're totally not about that at all. So for my guys, the dream life is just earning an income that they deserve. A lot of people in the fitness, health and wellness world do not earn the income. They literally are changing lives and helping people to live longer. I think it's the best job in the world. But they're not recognized for it. And, you know, quite often they're underpaid. So part of our mission statement is to help as many fit pros earn a decent wage as we can. So we do put out a lot of free information to help people raise their profile and raise their profits. But what I mean by live your dream life is to build your business around your life and live an ordinary dream life. And for my guys, that means, like, I had one woman who started working with me 2 years ago. She wanted to take 5 weeks holiday a year because she was just running herself into the ground. And every time she took a holiday, she would lose people. So she created a membership site. And this year, she actually took 10 weeks holiday this year, guilt-free. That's the thing. A lot of my clients don't want to be working in the evenings because they've got small children and they just want to spend time with the family. A lot of people don't want to be working weekends. So we kind of reverse engineer all of that and figure out how they can earn the same income or a bigger income, have that family holiday that they want, have the time at home with the kids, spend time with their friends and family that they're probably currently not spending any time with because they're so busy on that hamster wheel. It's like no good getting to the end of your life and you turn around and your parents are no longer with you. You know, every Sunday I go for lunch with my parents. If you follow me on Instagram stories, you see it. And it's just about living your dream life.
I absolutely love that. So this totally fits with everything that we're about here. So you immediately get them to realize what's important to them. What do they value the most?
Yes.
And then build away from that.
Yes, build the business around your life. So when I started, one of the big things I wanted to do was travel. And so I created my product suite around traveling. And every year we go on retreat and my clients come with me because I like to travel. And hey, why not come along? You know, we've done blogging retreats. Last year we did a mindset retreat with hypnotherapy. That was good. This year I'm doing two. I've got in 2019, I've got a Paris Instagram workshop, which is going to be amazing. Imagine the pictures we'll bring back. And then I'm doing a writing workshop to help people with their blogs, books, sales copy, whatever they need help with in September in Spain. So yeah, it's just figure out what you want to do with your life and then build the business around it and get the audience to buy into it as well.
That's incredible. So on that note, this perfectly fits in again with where I want to take this, is a lot of people going back to this whole building something and creating something that they want to create.
Yeah.
A lot of them have a voice or a message or just something to share that can genuinely help and impact other people or the world, so to speak, but don't really know the best way to express it. What would be your tips for people on that? Because I think a lot, like, if you're not great at writing and you're trying to get into writing, you're immediately going to fall out of love with what it is that you want to do because, do you know what I mean? So
yeah, totally. Like people think, oh, I need to be a blogger or whatever is the hot thing at the time. What you should do is definitely play to your strengths. I mean, I blog because I have always been a writer, so that I will always blog, whether it goes out of fashion or not. I will always blog, but I like a podcast as well. I'm not a fan of being on screen, so you won't see me doing much YouTube, although I do stories.
You will be on YouTube.
Stories is like a documentary and it's so real, yeah? So I think just play to your strengths. If you're really good, which a lot of fit pros are at talking, then a podcast would be a great idea, or even just going live on social media. So live in your groups, in your Facebook groups. You can do Twitter lives as well nowadays. If you really love networking, then you should definitely be on Twitter. Whatever, if you like doing graphics, then be all over Pinterest and Instagram. You know, just play to your strengths. I mean, you want to be repurposing your content in many different formats anyway. So take the one message and then, you know, if you're not only good at graphics, get somebody who is and create graphics using quotes from your blogs and things like that. So you want to be kind of repurposing your message, but your main message should be delivered in the way that you feel comfortable delivering it.
Amazing. So once you know that message and you kind of know your strengths and know how you're going to get that out there, is there anything you feel that people should maybe take into consideration? Or because a lot of people know how they want to do it, they don't necessarily know how to go about it, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
they just start posting things for the sake of posting things.
Yeah. I mean, you've always got to have your audience in mind. You should never really be talking about you. You should always be talking about them. And going back to what we were saying before about standing on stage or, you know, delivering your message there, you do get that imposter syndrome and you probably want to put something out on Facebook, but you don't push the button and say send because you think, oh, God, what will people think? And so I teach what I call persona branding, where you put a different hat on, and that helps you to push that button because it's a bit like dressing up when you were a kid. So you're still there underneath, but you put a hat on. So sometimes it's hard to think of the person. I mean, God, people that know me know that I'm a bit Bridget. I am a bit Bridget Jones because we have the journalist. We're both single. I am a bit ditzy. But, you know, we have our goal in mind and we just go until we get it kind of thing. And so whenever I'm posting on social media, I think, would Bridget post this? Would Bridget say this? And if the answer is yes, I'll post it. If the answer is no, then I won't post it. And so you could think about who your alter ego, your persona is. And if you can't think of one instantly, you can either think of the cast of Friends. Are you a Joey? Are you a Ross? You may be a Monica, even if you're a boy, or a Phoebe. Or the girls in Sex and the City. Because when Candace Bushnell wrote Sex and the City, each girl has an element of the female psyche. So psychology comes into marketing a lot. And so we all have a little bit of Charlotte, a little bit of Samantha, and you would be able to identify with one of them in particular. So if nobody comes to mind instantly, pick one of those for now until you can kind of identify your persona. And sometimes you will have two or three. Like when I step on stage, I am a little bit Bethany Frankel, or more recently, Ryan Serhant, who's from a $1 Million Listing in America.
I love that. So you're placing it out of yourself, aren't you? Which is good.
Yeah, it just helps you, gives you that extra push that you need to fly.
Oh, that's amazing. We use that a lot with trying to get people to break down or kind of separate or personalize what's actually holding them back as well. So that's an amazing way of flipping it into a different way of. I've never seen that before. That's a really powerful way to do it. Brilliant. So moving through to you then, what's next for you, Yvonne? What's next for you and the Big Me Up crew?
Well, like I said, I've got my 2 retreats next year, so that's on the agenda. I'm also writing a book. Oh,
amazing.
I know. And it's called How to Live Your Ordinary Dream Life. And I'm going to walk people through a lot of the things that I've talked about today. So I deal with, business, media, branding and story. And so it's going to walk people through that. And I've written the first draft of that down. But then also going along with that is almost like a book within a book, where I'm going to be telling some of my personal stories and some of my clients' personal stories about how we actually used the elements that I outline in the book. So you're going to get like a personal story along with a a blueprint of how to grow your profile, grow your profits.
That's phenomenal.
And live your dream life.
Well, congratulations on that. I'm excited to pick that up and read it. If I was to be cheeky and say if there was one big hitting tip from that book that we can share to our audience, what would that be?
I think just trying to think of something that you probably haven't have heard of before, because I could easily say, reverse engineer, but everybody says reverse engineer. I mean, it is key. I'm just trying to think what people might have that's an aha moment. So it's because I always try, actually, this is perfect because I always try and deliver something that is different. So you always swim against the tide to stand out in the marketplace. You can't say the same that everybody else is saying. So when I was talking about you being a leader and being part of a movement, the way that you do that is not being the same as everybody else. You need to be different. And that could be the language that you use is slightly different. The messaging that you have is slightly different. The way you dress, you might notice some people get attention because of the way they dress or how they have their hair. So I think being different, but still being authentically you is key. That's probably the message that I would give.
Good. That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. So a lot of people, we keep hearing this authentic, be your authentic self. And I was going to say from our flip side on that, we tend to find that's the sticking point for a lot of people because they don't really spend enough time with themselves or know exactly who that authentic person is for them.
Yeah.
Is there anything you guys do within the Dream Life Academy which kind of gets people to look inwards and really work out who they are and work out is what they're doing actually for them and going to move them forwards?
I'm going to say almost the opposite in a sense, because the people that I work with, that's what they deal with. So they deal a lot with mindset, wellness. So they kind of know all of that anyway. But even when they know it, it's very hard for them to implement it. So I'm almost like a container for them to say it doesn't matter really, in a sense. Like they have got to deal with that on their side. But for me, just getting your story out there and everything, you don't really have to know yourself. You just need the headlines because we deal in headlines, we deal in images. I'm just trying to think. The only way that I get them to do it is in the early days. They create Sorry, somebody's coming to the door. It's always the way, isn't it? I think my assistant will get it. The way that we do it is to get them to create a Pinterest board with their dream life on it. And so they will put down all the different things they want. And we look at all elements. So family life, business life, finances, health and wellness. So we do kind of tick the boxes there to know themselves. But for me, being authentic, I mean, I don't know, do people put too much onus on that nowadays? Like, obviously, why do we have to, this is the thing, why do we have to think about being authentic? Surely we are all authentic anyway. I think the only question you have to ask is how much you want to share with the general public, because once it's out there on the internet, you can't take it back. And I think people do fall into a trap of oversharing. I see that a lot, especially on Facebook, when they tell too much of their story. And I just find that uncomfortable. I think you can go too far.
Exactly. I absolutely love what you just said there about the whole authenticity thing. I think from the way I see it, I think if you always go in search of something, or if you always believe that something's wrong, you're always going to keep going down that rabbit hole and trying to find something. I think that's where it can keep tripping you up as well. So
yeah, definitely.
Right, what I want to do from here is just ask you a couple of power questions. I want to kind of flip this a little bit more and take a bit of a different approach with you.
Okay.
So the biggest thing for you is, what would you say has been your biggest struggle from obviously going down the route that you've done, taking such a huge, powerful leap and creating what you've created, and obviously serving the masses in which you're serving? What's been your personal biggest struggle with it?
So it's a difficult one. I suppose it's kind of mixing I'll say real life, real life with your internet life. Because the way that we do business is very much business and pleasure combined. We do mix the two. I think for me, the biggest struggle, about the only thing that does get me down sometimes is loneliness, really, being on my own, because I'm single. But I have surrounded myself with certainly a lot of female friends, a lot of male friends as well, but I have an army of female friends. A lot of them are very similar as well, single, divorced. In fact, I was joking with my dad yesterday, and I said, oh my God, even if I meet somebody now, I'm going to be knocking on a bit if I was to get married. And I was saying, by the time we're all 70, we'll probably be all having second weddings. How funny will it be? But I think that's hard because, if you have an idea, if you've got a partner, you can be laying in bed at night and you can say, oh, I've got this crazy idea. What do you think? And they'll go, yeah, go for it. Or, are you mad? Don't do it. And I don't have that. So I just, I just kind of have to have those conversations with myself in my head. Or I might ask Alexa. But I realise she's not very good and I end up rowing with her.
Or just plays music.
Yeah. So I think the loneliness for me is probably the hardest thing to deal with, especially when I look back on when I did have a relationship for the first 2 years of being an entrepreneur. Me and my ex had a boot camp together, and then I did Big Me Up as well. And I mean, that was great because then we would go to the pub on a Friday night, early doors, and we would have our accountability meeting together and keep each other accountable. And I really loved that. But now, as I said at the start of the show, I do it myself at 5 o'clock on a Sunday. I had to change it so that it wasn't the same kind of habit, but keep the same thing that I do. So it's learning to be very independent. And that's hard, I think. That's the hardest struggle.
I think the amazing thing that I see from you is the amount of amazing people you've actually surrounded yourself with, not just online, but also offline. So instead of having that one person, the way I see it, you have hundreds of people who are around you. Do you know what I mean? Which you can bounce those crazy ideas off. Yes, I do have certain friends that I can message, usually on Instagram nowadays at 2 a.m. going, am I crazy for wanting to do this? In fact, I did it last night with Hanny. Me and Hanny had a bit of a heart-to-heart. And quite often you will see my thoughts on Instagram on the feed. So things come out. It's almost like a diary. And in my blogs, today I did a very open blog about the split, when I split from my partner. Even though it was 4 years ago, there's still remnants of that have helped me live my life now. Yeah. I absolutely love, and again, I'll acknowledge you for the fact that you've just come out and spoke about that. I think that's such a powerful thing. As well, with this topic of conversation, which we're talking about, a lot of the people who we tend to speak to, or when we're at events and stuff like that, are sometimes in a similar position. Yeah. Now, this is completely off script and off the schedule. I knew this would happen. But what are the biggest things? Is there any advice you'd give to anyone who might have just suddenly found themselves in that position, or might have gone through something similar where they might find themselves on their own and want to go out there? Yeah, when the world turns to shit, you mean? Yeah. It's really difficult. I think the biggest thing, what I did was I concentrated on literally feeding myself, nourishing myself and resting. And that's pretty much all I could do. I didn't listen to music for 9 months because I couldn't bear to listen to any of the songs that we used to play, that kind of thing. So I kind of just went into a bubble, but I think it's very easy to then
not look after yourself. And so the only thing I concentrated on was making sure that I ate, first of all, making sure that I drank water, didn't feel like exercising, made sure I got out of bed every morning, just gentle walks, feeding yourself good food until you build up your strength again, and then you can come back.
Yeah.
And having friends, you know.
So you flipped internal, you brought everything in, and you essentially, we'll use it as a pun for the podcast, but you nourished yourself back, or to a position where you were stronger. Yeah, that's incredible. I think that's what I see is so many people don't do, is they'll go the other way. So instead of bringing everything back into themselves and using it as a lesson or something to grow from, that they can go the other way with it.
Oh, I'll tell you one other thing I did, and that's when I first started doing it, and it really anchors me. I started writing down my 3 gratefuls for the day. And that makes me feel very strong, because when you wake up in the morning, you don't always see what you're grateful for. And it can be little things like, I can see blue sky in the clouds today, you know, just a little bit. And when you look at those 3 things, they do bring it back to you that, yeah, it's not all bad.
I love that. Absolutely love that. How would you go about writing that? Now, I see in the world, I do a lot of this sort of stuff myself. I'm very big on it, but how would you go around it? Because a lot of people really kind of struggle with it. So when they're doing the whole I'm grateful for, I always think they kind of find themselves in a bit of a repetitive pattern, and they don't really think outside the box with it.
Yeah, it's funny because normally I'm just looking to see if I've got my book. I have a book near me all the time, and I write ideas down and just my thoughts for the day kind of thing. Yeah. And I don't always do it. I do it more when the world has turned to shit. When things are tickety-boo, I don't use it as much. And I think I should be stricter with myself, because it does help to keep that clarity and everything. I literally write down my 3, once I've written what's in my head, so that I get that out on paper, and then I just write down my 3 Gs, and then I literally list the 3. However, I listened to a podcast yesterday, I think it was Marie Forleo, and she used to do the same. And then she said that somebody taught her to do it a different way, and you only write down 1, but then you write down 5 reasons why that is your 1. And so I did this yesterday, and I wrote my son, because I am grateful for my son, who's also my digital manager, who does all the social media and lots of other stuff. He's my PA. So I put down that I was grateful for Robert, and then I wrote down 5 reasons why I was grateful for Robert. And Robert is one of the people who does keep me grounded. So when I do have a crazy idea, he'll just look at me and say, "Have you lost the plot?" And then we'll both laugh. Or, "Oh yeah, I can see that working," you know. So there was 5 different reasons that I could see that I was grateful for him, and it did take it to a different level. I really liked it, so I'm going to be doing that in 2019.
I've heard that done before, and it's something that we kind of do from our end as well. It just reinforces why it is something that's powerful. This might be something for you to take into consideration. Well, another great way I've seen it done. This was when I was, I can't remember what country I was speaking at, but basically what they did was, instead of just being this all-round gratefulness, was actually giving it structure. So it was like, what are you grateful for in your environment? Who are you grateful for? What are you grateful for about yourself? What's one personal attribute today that shone? And it was just a way of taking it. Oh, you're writing this down now, aren't you?
No, I'm literally, my power's going. So right.
So I thought that was an absolutely amazing way of doing it. Was getting it to look at absolutely every single area as well, of like what's actually going right. And I thought that was such a powerful way of doing it. That's phenomenal.
I really like that. And when you say, with yourself, I kind of cringe at that, because I very often don't think of that. I'm always thinking of others. But when you look at yourself, I don't know, that's when it gets a bit emotional, doesn't it?
Well, a lot of people don't look at themselves in the mirror and go, I like this about me. Do you know what my confidence shone today? And what were the 5 reasons that happened? And I think if you can start, it sounds so cliche and cheesy in this kind of like wellness thing that we're going in, but if you can start showing yourself more self-appreciation, more self-love, it'll build you more up than where it goes.
Yeah, definitely.
It's always one where you get a bit of a penny change moment in people as well.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So anyway, Yvonne, flipping this through, what I want to do is ask you another couple of very quick questions, which are kind of hard hitting. So number 1 is, you get to go back and give yourself 1 core piece of advice. So what I want you to do is really, really think back to a time in your young years, say when you were 15 years younger, below, or anything like that, and you've got one core piece of content that you can give to the younger version of yourself, what would that be?
Oh, I don't know, I struggle with this because there's one that immediately comes to mind, and as soon as it comes to mind, I'm like, nah, actually. So the reason I struggle with this is because I've always gone on instinct, no matter what I've done in life. So sometimes I've done things and it's not always been a popular choice with the people around me, but I just do it anyway. And I think that goes back to being stuck in that bloody sand hole. And so I don't really have any regrets. So I've always lived my life on my terms. And so normally you would turn around and say something like that at this point. It's like, oh, don't do that thing that you did. And even though I've gone down this path and, I think I got married too soon, really. But I don't regret that because I have my sons.
So the powerful lesson in that is follow your intuition then, isn't it?
Yeah. I suppose I was to just say, hey, girlfriend, whatever happens, you're doing the right thing. So you are going to make some stupid mistakes in the world, but go with it because ultimately, you're going to do good. So yeah, just listen to yourself.
Brilliant. And last but not least is for you personally, Yvonne, what does it mean for you to be able to live a dream or a nourished life?
Well, it means the world to me because for so many years I lived to deadlines, a very stressful situation as a journalist. I was writing a lot for national press. I worked stupid hours, very little money. And just to have the freedom to wake up with no alarm and not have to jump in my car and go here, there and everywhere. You never knew where you were going from one day to the next. I do a lot of nourishing, like with meditation. I go to the gym regularly. And I am living my dream life. And I'm really loving it.
And it all started from taking that leap.
I know, crazy.
So, Yvonne, amazing. I absolutely love having you on the podcast and getting to interview you in a bit of a different manner of question than probably what you're used to. So I just want to acknowledge you again and just say it's amazing what you're doing. To see the amount of people's lives you are actually changing, being in the group and watching it from the external is massive. I think it's absolutely amazing that you're helping people take that leap and actually create the life that they want to create. So it's amazing, Yvonne. Yvonne, where can people find you? Where can people find out more?
My website is bigmeupmedia.com. So go check me out there and find me on Instagram. I am Big Me Up Media on Instagram.
And also stay tuned for the book.
Oh, God, yes. It'll be out next year. I promise.
Yvonne, thank you.
Ready to break the mold? Learn more about leading a nourished life by visiting the Nourish Group and Simon Hall on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter. Nourish Life.
And that's it for episode number 2 of the Nourish Life Show. A big thank you to Yvonne for coming on, and a big thank you to you guys for spending some time with us today. Now, if you can, tag us in your socials and let us know you've been listening, or more to the point, what you've taken away. Leave us a review, or if you are looking at taking those next steps, we do have a free community online. So if you get yourself over to Facebook and type in the Nourish You Academy, invite yourself in, and we've got a huge community of people looking at taking the next step forwards in there and giving each other advice, support, and helping each other along the way.